Hey everybody, it's Lisa here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been here before. I just want to take this opportunity to remind you that you should go ahead and subscribe to this channel for more insightful conversations like this one. Okay, we are talking with Amara L. Graham about her viewpoint on this unique relationship between the pastoral family and the church. Here's her third point.
So my third point, hmm, our parents' time is shared, and that is a twofold. So when I say our parents' time is shared, again, when our parents are called into the ministry, unlike day jobs, where you know the time that you clock in and you know the time that you clock out, ministry doesn't ever work like that because life doesn't work like that. When I gave the analogy of the church being the hospital, yes, hospitals have hours, but it's 24/7, right? Like there are those who are leading and they have shifts, but pastors don't even oftentimes have shifts, right? Like there are doctors who are there to serve, there are surgeons, all the things. And there are those who are put in place so that one surgeon is not required to be there 24 hours, 7 days out the week. But when you think about a church, oftentimes the church structure is not even set up in such a way where the pastor and his team are there to exchange and take shifts, right? So when you think of life happening, you think about the people that show up in church, especially for bigger congregations, and life is happening to every single one of us. And when I say life happening, life can happen in the aspects of you get sick, you end up in the hospital, someone's son gets sent to jail, or, a daughter gets sent to jail, or, like literally life is happening for so many members in so many different ways. This could be someone losing their apartment. This could even now be what's happening in our political climate, where there are those who are dealing with immigration issues. And so Sister So-and-so may have been in church on Sunday, but now Sister So-and-so may be back in Grenada. And sometimes you don't, don't know why, but until people disappear and then you start asking questions. But the point that I bring up there is that pastors don't have hours. And so it's almost like they are expected to be present 24/7. And when you think of pastoral ministries, there's a reason why there's a lead pastor, there's a reason why, or it could be a bishop, depending upon the denomination. But there's a reason why there's a lead, there's a reason why there's an assistant, there's a reason why there's a deacon or deaconesses. Like there's a reason why there's a structure. And oftentimes people don't think of structure, they think of immediate need. And because I have a need, I need to just call pastor and pastor needs to show up. And if pastor doesn't show up, then, who is he? And it's so funny how demanding people can be. And so my encouragement, or I guess my thought when I'm sharing that is be mindful. For those who are a part of a congregation, be mindful. Just as the pastor oftentimes can only pray, like, yeah, there are times where the pastor can show up in the hospital room and, he's praying with you or she is praying with you. Be mindful that you can also pray for yourself, right? Like the same, just as pastor is calling on God, pastor is not pastor is not God's son, and then you are therefore God's stepson or stepdaughter. Like the same access that pastors have is the same access that you have. When you come into the church, the whole goal is to grow spiritually, so much so that the scriptures and the stories that you hear really become a part of your life. It helps to change who you are. It draws you closer to God because Christianity is really about relationship with God. It's not about us showing up to church on a Sunday and checking that box, and then Monday we're over here cussing sister so and so out. Like it literally is a change. It's a change in the lifestyle. It's a change in who you are and becoming more Christ-like. So with that, be mindful of your expectations regarding the pastor and his time or her time, because they have families. And that really also goes into the expectation for pastors to set boundaries. Like people can't honor something that has not, they can't honor a precedent that has not been set by you. And especially when you have younger children, it's important that just as you are there for the church, that you're also there for your family, because the church is Christ's bride, but your wife and your kids are yours. That is your first ministry. Let's not ever get that messed up and twisted, because when you miss that mark, everything else begins to fall apart. You can be great at church, but if home is not taken care of, then understand that what's done in darkness comes to light. So your lack of presence is going to be evident some way, shape, or form because you've missed the mark. So that's one point for pastors. But as far as the expectations that the ministry can have, it's really important that boundaries be set. So I know that growing up, my father is really, really big. He has such a big heart, and he's really big on making sure the people have access. And so as we've gotten older, granted, we have done the piano lessons, dance classes, we've done singing lessons. Like, I'm grateful my parents invested a lot in us. But there was also times where they had to make choices. There were times where they had to decide whether or not they were going to make a soccer game or be at a church meeting, which is why it's really important that you have leaders that you can trust who work alongside you, because it's important that you show up at the soccer game. It's important that you show up for the dance recital. It's important that you don't miss any graduation. It's important that you be present, because when your kids lack your presence, they seek presence elsewhere. And that goes into the desire for drugs, that goes into the desire for relationships that they should not be engaging in at early ages, because your presence in a ministry can have now caused mom or daddy issues. So it's really important that I think pastors set that precedent, but it's also really important for church members to understand that the same God that your pastor is calling on is the same God that you can call on. And if you don't know what scriptures to call, if you're going through a season where you're needing healing, it's okay to pull up Chat GPT or Google and look up scriptures on healing. It's okay. Like, there's a reason for these resources, right? So when you begin to pray the scripture, when you begin to ask God to show up and heal, the pastor can be another facet of prayer for you, or another source, or the church rather can become another source in which you have a community that's joining alongside and keeping you lifted. But again, remember that pastors ought not to be at your beck and call. You should never ever feel like you should only, like, the only way that a prayer gets answered is that you call on that pastor. So I would say to the congregation, be mindful of how much you're demanding. Be mindful of the times that you're calling, because it's never appropriate to, unless someone is dying, it is never appropriate to call at 11, 12 o'clock at night because you need a prayer. Be mindful, right? Like, just be mindful. Be
Agreed.
mindful. Yeah. And as far as my other point there is on, allow us as kids to have our time with our families. Again, many, especially when you have pastors who are leading or who have younger children, that requires that two parents be present, right? So it's not just okay that the pastor's wife take care of this and that the pastor is just elsewhere. Like, sometimes when you have more than one child, it requires both parents deal with their children. So be mindful of what you're requiring and what you're asking. Allow us time with our families. I've grown to be very mindful. Like, social media is a thing, but when it comes down to my family, you'll find that I don't always share all of our moments because it's my family. Like, yes, my father is a pastor, and he often feels like he belongs to the church. But I say now, like, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to share him, but he belongs to me. I hone in on that. He belongs to me.
Yes.
He's my father. He's my
Yes.
father first before
Right.
he's Pastor Graham. And that has meant that we've had to be intentional. Growing, like, as kids, my parents were very intentional about us. But even as we've gotten older, I've become that much more intentional about making sure I spend time with them. And with that being said, I am just mindful of what I share and what I post, because it reminds me that there is a measure of family time that I require, and not everything needs to be shared with everybody. So I think that it has its stages, and every stage requires something different. But to the congregation, be mindful, and to church and to pastors rather, just set your boundaries, because people can't honor what you don't say. So just be mindful about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of that, and then I'm gonna go back a little bit. But while you were sharing about, setting boundaries, I saw this image of just like a man playing. Maybe I'm imagining it that just at a church outing, a church picnic with a kid. Maybe it's his kid, and he's like goo goo gaga in with his kid, and then like a congregation member comes up and just starts randomly talking, and he still has the kid, but now his attention is kind of like
Right.
divided. And so I was thinking that definitely, we have a lot of church outings, and it's good for the church to build community. But I think one way that pastors can even begin to set boundaries is by also planning family outings outside of church gatherings.
Oh yeah, legit.
Yeah, because that way you're having time with your family. No one's coming over and kind of like interrupting that special time, that special moment that you have with your family. I don't know if a lot of pastors do that, but while you were sharing, that's just something that I saw one way that pastors can create boundaries.
Can I
Um,
add, is it okay if I interrupt you there? Because I want to add to that.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
it's interesting because growing up, like so there's three of us. I'm the oldest, and I have my little brother Anthony. He's not little at all. He's actually bigger than me now. But Anthony's in the middle. And then there's Amira. And I bring my siblings up because we're all different. And my parents have had to figure out our differences and what meets each of us. So for me, my dad and I, we love IHOP. It's kind of our thing. And when I was growing up, we would have daddy-daughter dates at IHOP, especially when I was in my teenage years. And at times where I was not, he traveled quite a bit. And so with him traveling, he always made sure he brought a toy, something home for us to let us know, like, hey, I'm traveling, but I'm still thinking of you guys. When he was home and not traveling, because he was also a teacher, so not like a traditional pastor that only pastors a church. He had to split his time legit. Like he would teach during the day in Brooklyn, and then he'd come back home to Long Island and sometimes take up meetings on the phone, or he'd head to the church. Like he had like office hours at the church. But again, certain seasons require certain things. So he'd always make sure that he make it home for bedtime because he'd read me bedtime stories. And I share those moments because when I speak to pastors now, and it's funny because now that I'm a little bit older, there's a little bit more respect, so I can have an adult conversation with other pastors, and I like to ask questions. But especially those that have children, I always ask, how are you spending time with your kids? Like, do you actually have designated, as you said, designated times for them? And that could be taking them to the movies. Like every child requires something different. So for me and my dad, it was IHOP dates, but when I was younger, he'd read me bedtime stories. And in seasons when I was a teenager and I wasn't really interested in having conversations with them face to face, I used to send him emails because I learned that I still needed to be able to communicate, but I needed a safe space where I can write my words, and he would send me emails back. And it's funny because I think about these moments now and I think of how him and I relate. And I'm grateful that as much as life and responsibilities and raising a family and making sure that you could provide for them, and then church and honoring God and what God is asking of you, because it's a huge task to pastor a church. He was also doing his absolute best to make sure that he had conversations with us, that he was as present with us as he could be. And if he couldn't, there was still some measure of, I'm thinking of you. And if you don't understand why, here is why. And he spent a lot of time explaining the whys, because I was a kid that was like, why this and why that and why that. Every kid is different. But for
Yeah.
pastors now, I always ask the question, and if I'm allowed to, right? Everything in decency and respect. But I always ask, and I pay a lot of attention to, what does your home life look like? What does your family life look like? Because you can't take me someplace that you haven't been. And as a member of a congregation, I want to be led by someone who has gotten it right. And granted, there's no perfect person, but I'm learning I analyze certain things and I ask certain questions, because just as in scripture, when Jesus would ask certain questions, it was more so to raise awareness. But
Yeah.
sometimes they were rhetorical, but it was to raise awareness to something that you may be missing out on. And my only encouragement to add to what you shared is set aside time with your kids and with your family outside. Like, man, take your wife on a date. Like date night shouldn't just be us going to prayer meeting on Wednesday night. Like that's not really time
Not trying to
together.
tell me date night is our Bible study. Boy, bye.
Right, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Like you'd be surprised.
Lord, no, please change it, Lord.
I know, change it, Lord. Change it, Lord.
Woo!
I know. We laugh, but this is really how some people live, and you understand
Yeah.
why there's a lot of resentment sometimes in families, because sometimes they just don't know how to balance.
Yeah, I've seen pastors' wives just leave the ministry or leave their pastors hanging. And I can only imagine their reasoning behind that. And I'm pretty sure one of them could be this.
There's no time. We don't spend time together.
Right. And so creating that time like date night and then family outings outside of the church. And I think we said it kind of covertly, but definitely creating office hours. And I think people may or may not know this, but you said something earlier that people can be demanding, right?
And I remember I went to a church one time, and our pastor, he would say, like, I know y'all want to come in for counseling every week, and I know y'all want to do this, blah, blah, but how's your prayer life? Like, what's your Bible reading like? And I think that we have to be mindful before, I think we should ask ourselves a few questions before we reach out to our pastors. And it's, have I been consistently in my word? Have I been praying? Have I asked the Lord about it? The thing that I want to call my pastor and ask him about, have I asked the Lord about it? And then if not, then we need to reevaluate now our relationship with our pastor and reevaluate where we put our pastor versus where we put God. And then from there, just kind of definitely make the lifestyle changes that we need to make, because the pressure that we're putting on our pastors and on people sometimes is the pressure that we need to put on God, right? And what's pressure to them is actually who God is who we need to turn. The pressure we're putting on them, God is just standing there waiting to meet that need.
Oh yeah.
We the flaw in us is to trust what we see, to trust who we see. But there's a greater level of faith that's developed when we trust God for who He is and not take who He's supposed to be and put it on other people. I already said a lot. We've been on point three for a while. I can say some more things, but I think we should move on to your fourth point.
Yes, yes, yes. We did spend quite a few, quite a time, a long time on point three. You know, if I had to sum up point three, I'd say this: set boundaries. That's all it is. Pastors, I think you have this great responsibility not only to lead the church, but also to be in control and orderly about your life, right? To your personal life. And while your major role in the eyes of the world is this man of God who's in charge of all of these people, ultimately your first ministry is your wife and your children. Scripture talks about that. And so we want to make sure that while everyone is looking at you and thinking that your biggest role and your biggest responsibility and your greatest level of dedication is to them, it's actually to your home, your house, your wife, and your children. So I'm going to encourage you, if you're a pastor here, to consider what kind of boundaries you set as a minister, someone who serves the house of the Lord in such a great way. What boundaries do you set and how do you enforce those boundaries? Because if I was to sum up our conversation today, I would say one, we need to set boundaries, and two, we need to also enforce it, right? If there's a prayer team in place, is sister so and so and brother so and so calling you at ungodly hours for prayer. Hey, sister Maggie. Hey, sister. What? What did the prayer team say about this little prayer request? Right? Just kind of like you know what your boundaries are. Sometimes people may need a gentle redirection, and that's okay. That's okay. Redirection is okay. Redirection is one of the ways that you can reinforce the boundaries that you set. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is creating family time. See, once you've established those boundaries and you've reinforced them, you'll realize that you have more time for your first ministry, not what people think is your first ministry. You have time for your first ministry, your wife and your children. And so I would suggest to you that one, date night is not Wednesday night Bible study. Date night is not the church retreat. You know, the family vacation or the family weekend is not the family weekend for the church, right? That's for the families of the church. The family weekend or the family time is exclusive outside of the church. You want your children to feel unique. You're their father. Yes, you're a pastor, and there may be female pastors watching this. Yes, you're a pastor, but you're also a mother. And so you want them to feel as special to be your child as the church feels to be your congregation members. So we're setting boundaries, we're reinforcing them, and we're creating special times with our family. The church picnic every July, your church bus ride, is not your family vacation. It's not your treat to your children, right? Create intentional time with your spouse and create intentional time with your children. Well, listen, I don't want to go too much into point three. We already said a lot. I just want to encourage you as a pastor to set boundaries, as a congregation member. Be sure that you are considerate about your pastoral family, right? You're being considerate not just about your pastor, but also to his wife and his children. If you were in their shoes, how would you feel if you did some of the things that you did when it came to kind of like monopolizing the time of your pastor, right? So I want you to consider that. And then consider or reconsider the ways that you connect with your pastors and your pastoral family. Consider that. And there's one more thing that I think that I've missed that I wanted to say is that yeah, the church has um pastors. This one is for you. Yeah, you have these boundaries, you have the prayer team, but you also have leaders in the church, whether it's an assistant pastor, a co-pastor, that you can designate specific tasks to. So if this task comes up, everyone in the congregation knows that we go to this person. If this comes up, we go to the leader of this ministry, right? So you have deacons, deaconesses, prophets, you have teachers, evangelists. Maybe a person needs teaching. Maybe they might not need prayer. They might need teaching. Go back to teaching from such and such. Blah, 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 blah. You know? Like, so that's it. Obviously, I'm excited about point 3, and I'm even more excited about point 4. So hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you can stay connected. Next week, we're going to have point 4. Don't miss it.